I'm Dan Drake. This is Front Up on Geno TV and Channel 99. Our guest today is John Beach, the Reverend John Beach,
yes,
who is the new rector of St. Paul's Episcopal Church here in Nantucket.
It's a delight to be here. Thank you.
Thank you for coming. You've been here, what, 3 months now?
That's
4
correct.
months?
Yep.
Tell us a little bit about your background before, because it's you've been different places.
I've been different places. I've spent the last 10 years in Geneva, Switzerland, and I've working for an Episcopal church there, largely with people work for UN and humanitarian organizations and the local thing. But so we've been there for 10 years. I spent most of my life in Canada, but grew up here, and it's good to be back to the place where I spent my childhood.
Did you spend time in Nantucket, actually?
No, I lived in Western Mass, a different country from here. But but it is good to be back. And actually, some of the kids from my elementary school have houses in Nantucket, which is a strange sort of coming around.
It does happen.
Yep.
So what are your first impressions? Has it been what you expected? Has it been...
Well, I've only been here during the cold, dark months, and I've been really quite impressed with the people who do carve out a life here when all the tourists have gone away, and they have an amazing ability to entertain and educate themselves, and I'm impressed with the level of community and support that exists here, and people know each other and are interested in each other and have conversations with each other in ways that I find really quite unique and wonderful. So it's been good to be here before the crowds descend upon us.
What about sort of unhappy surprises? Have there been any of those?
Well, initially unhappy. You know, my wife, who had a heart condition when we first arrived, and had to be helicoptered off to Mass General, and so
that was a couple of weeks ago, right?
That was a couple of weeks ago, and that was it was good to see that there is an infrastructure in place to ensure that even in a remote place like this, we can have adequate health care. But it's a pretty scary feeling to feel isolated and vulnerable out here. But I've been impressed both with the hospital and with and the community and their support during that time.
Good.
Yeah.
What did you find when you came to St. Paul's?
Well, when I came to St. Paul's, or coming, it's the first time in 20 years that I've returned to the U.S. And
where were you before then?
I was in Toronto, and then in Montreal, and so it's. And the U.S. has changed quite a bit, and sort of the level of civil discourse is really descended, and it's a very odd state of affairs. One of the wonderful things about being on the island is you're forced to be in conversation with people with whom you disagree, whereas in a big city you can just hang around like-minded people and call them jerks. And but here you have to actually talk to them and get to know them and understand something of what it is they value. The community at St. Paul's has been really a wonderful and deep and rich community. There are people who've come from all over the place and who have, over the course of their lives, developed roots in Nantucket. It's a wonderful worshiping community of people of a variety of ages and backgrounds, and I'm glad that they've received me and my family into this place.
What, in terms of the community, again, have you identified any areas of the community that you might like to get involved in, or is it too soon?
No, there's lots of things that I would like to understand, and B, respond to in a way that's constructive and helpful. The first being the housing crisis here on the island, and the difficulty in people in carving out a life for themselves if they can't have a place where they can live, that they can afford to live. And I realize that the forces behind that are immensely complex, but there is a desire to ensure that the people who support this community can actually live in this community, and I'd like to understand how that happens. I'm interested in the growing, I feel a strange fact is the growing rate of heroin addiction on the island, and there's several people who work in public health that have been sharing with me how addiction rates have been soaring with opiates and other and that seems so strange and came as a tremendous surprise. When I think of this as an affluent place where people live very blessed lives, and what are the forces that are contributing to that, and how can the church and the community respond in a constructive way?
Just as an aside, we were talking before we started taping about Maine.
Yeah.
And I understand it's a terrible problem, maybe even a worse problem in rural Maine.
And it's hard to think of a rural place where you would not have access to, distribution networks for heroin, that they find a distribution network to go into places, northern Maine, where connections to large cities and airports and harbors are not that great. So, yeah, it's a big problem there, and a new problem, and that's something that, at least for them, and that's something, that I would like to understand a bit more. So also I'd like to see what can be done to raise the level of public discourse. It is quite disturbing to see people delighting in tearing down each other.
Have you seen that here?
Not on the island, certainly whenever I turn on the television.
Certainly, yes.
I watched the presidential debates and saw, was flooded with a bunch of memories from middle school, and these are not pleasant memories. And I think that it's not a helpful climate right now.
Do you think there's any hope for it?
Oh, yes, there is. I think people, when they actually see the faces of people with whom they're speaking, when they actually try to understand what they value, what it is they wish to communicate with, people are good. I think people have a desire to understand and learn from each other. I think but we actually have to sit down and articulate and listen to what those things are.
The listening is the key part of it, isn't it?
It is.
John, how is it that you became a priest? What led you to the vocation?
Well, I've been a priest for 30 years in the U.S., in Canada, and in Switzerland. And I've always...
Where did you go to?
I went to seminary in Montreal, and where I met my wife, and went to university, and at McGill University. And I'm very interested in what it is that causes people to pursue the things they pursue. What is it that people are looking for and are hungry for? What is it that inspires people to seek wisdom? I have a degree in mathematics, and I got then a graduate degree in the history and philosophy of science, and I am interested in the pursuit of knowledge, and how our desire to become more human has led us in our search for God, and how people are constructive in spite of the fact that there are many self-destructive forces that are at work in our lives. I don't know if that's a concrete answer. I mean, the longer answer would take more than an hour. But also I feel like I part of it is to talk to people about things that are genuinely meaningful to them, as opposed to the situation comedies on which I grew up, and so that's what.
It's easy to dance around the basic aspects of conversation that one should have.
It is.
So, well, John Beach, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Best of luck to you here in Nantucket.
Yep.
And,
thank you so much.
And look forward to seeing you again.
Thank you.